Hi, welcome back to Little Conversations with Big Brothers, Big Sisters. We are highlighting this today, Hope for the Day, which is a mental health organization. May is Mental Health Awareness Month, so we'll be talking a little bit about that. And I'm excited to introduce Mike. Hi, Mike. How are you?
I'm great. Nice to see you. Thanks for having me. It's nice to see a friendly, familiar face, even if it's through a screen.
Yeah, we've worked together several times. You did a presentation for our coalition of youth serving organizations on stigmatizing mental health and how to be a peer and be a support system. So that's been our connection so far. And we were on your Conversations Cafe podcast. So
Yes, you were. Of
yeah, it was a great time. It was in Sip of Hope. So can you tell me a little bit about Hope for the Day and its offshoot Sip of Hope?
course. Hope for the Day's mission is empowering the conversation about proactive suicide prevention and mental health education. And we do that by raising the visibility through our wristbands, our shirts, our hats, really the words, "It's okay not to be okay," whether it be in a mural or on a poster or maybe on someone's chest. It starts conversations. People are curious, they read it, it runs counter to many of the things we inherited with regards to our attitudes that shape our responses to mental health. So it's definitely a conversation starter, but we also raise the visibility of resources in our community because since we don't prioritize or normalize conversations about mental health, sometimes people feel like there's nothing available around them in their community, even if they were to seek support like that. And that's just often not the case. We have a Hope for the Day's resource compass at Hope for the Day's website, hftd.org, where you can type in your zip code. And in partnership with Aunt Bertha's social care network, you can basically search wherever you're at in the U.S. For a variety of social services, not just mental health resources, but food relief, financial hardship, legal advice, a great number of things. So I encourage everybody to check that out. Even if you're not in the need of resources right now, it's nice to know that you can help someone that you care about that's in another state or another zip code. Search for some resources and be that bridge. And things like Sip of Hope Coffee Bar, it's a fixture, a beacon in the community where we used it as a hub to distribute resources, to break the silence as a community, to support the work we're doing through it being just a massive outreach program, and also the world's first coffee shop where 100% of the proceeds benefit suicide prevention and mental health education. So we're definitely in a place right now where with the shelter-in-place orders, we had to shut down. And, the longer it lasts and paying rent on a space and all the operating costs of a business that's not bringing in any revenue. Well, the realities of it were that we had to start a fundraising campaign to save SIP. So savesip.org will be a campaign going through May. But I'm proud to say that in just a week, it started last week, we've raised close to 50,000 out of the 60,000 that we're shooting for to save SIP. So it's just amazing to see that community support and how special and important it's been to our communities here in Chicago, where you can just walk in and grab resources, where you can walk in and have a conversation, and that it's okay to talk about mental health in that space. People are missing that, and not just people locally, but people have been inspired by the shop around the world. And there's been just an incredible outpouring of support to save SIP. So I'm super grateful that we likely will be able to continue to offer that beacon in the community whenever we open things back up in a responsible way.
Yeah, it really is a hub for community. It has resources for art programs and mental health and LGBTQ, but it also is a job creator. People work there, obviously, and also a space for art. So there is a really cool mural on the wall. Like you said, it's okay not to be okay. I got my shirt on. And so it's a really nice place to go. You guys record your Conversations Cafe. So I really appreciate that location.
Thank you.
I encourage everyone to support. So I wanted to talk about coronavirus and how we can provide some of our youth for resources. So our audience right now is our matches, our bigs, our littles, and families, and we're struggling to find ways to support and provide as many resources as possible. And what we know, we've found in other studies, is other quarantines, like from SARS. We have a lot of studies that show that kids experience post-traumatic stress disorder and depressive symptoms 4 times the amount as adults. So how do you think we should be talking to kids about coronavirus right now?
Well, I think it's really important to keep things fact-based. Even as an adult, you can run yourself in circles trying to sift through all the news stories and the conflicting information, and even navigating the questions that we don't have answers to yet. I think it's important to talk to kids about that this is serious, that it's unprecedented, that in our lifetimes we really haven't experienced something this severe and universal, and that we give the kids a downrange view. We encourage them to take it one day at a time like the rest of us, but we also talk about the future and think about the things that are to come, and still continue to foster that hope. Um, Staying busy is a big part of being able to occupy the mind and not let it wander to those really scary places, but also honoring the youth's feelings right now. Because if you think about being an adult and being in that survival mode, for the simple fact that there's a lot of uncertainty, there is the concern and paranoia of your safety, your personal safety of yourself and the people that you care about. And there are things that we can do to, control and mitigate as much risk as we can. So helping kids understand the importance of washing hands and trying not to touch your face. The importance of wearing a mask if we're going to be inside somewhere, if we have to go to the store. The importance of taking care of your physical health, because your mental health lives within your physical health. So a sleep routine, going to bed around the same time, getting up around the same time, and having your meals, like including the kids in conversations like that, show that you're a human being, that you're an adult, and this is hard for you too, but that you're going to get through it together, and that we're going to emerge from this stronger as a community, because it's definitely stoked people's compassion and empathy in understanding what anxiety can feel like, and what anxiety, how it can impact your quality of life significantly, and how important our human connections are. So taking it as an opportunity to really get to know your match, or spend some time talking about some of the deeper stuff, but making sure that you're always keeping an eye on the fact that you don't want to be spinning out a child when you yourself are spinning out. So if you are feeling in that survival mode and that heightened anxiety, and you're having trouble regulating your emotions, or having trouble focusing, or having trouble having energy and motivation, just because you're an adult doesn't mean you're not subject to the intensity, the impact that being in that heightened state of anxiety for an extended period of time can have on a human being, no matter your age. It takes a lot out of you.
Yeah. And something you and I talked about before this was about perspective. We're both working, we're still able to connect with the community, we're still working, we're still trying to do our best to navigate this. And I've talked on your podcast before about the importance of mentoring during this time, during any time, having someone to look up to. And one of the things I hear from bigs, our big brothers and the big sisters, are that their match really puts things into perspective for them. What are my stressors compared to their stressors, and how can I be a guiding light towards this? So what are some ways that we can recognize any symptoms of mental health during this time, and during any time? What are some of the symptoms?
Yeah, I'd say that right now it's even easier to have this conversation for a lot of people because people are concerned about the impacts of isolation. And for some people, this is the first time that they've had that control taken from them, and navigating that territory is really challenging. So making sure that we do everything in our power to acknowledge that we know that peer-to-peer proactive prevention is effective and impactful and can save lives, because it operates under the assumption that stigma makes it so hard to the conversation for yourself, especially when you're feeling really bad,
Mhm.
because you're really worried extra about what people are going to say about you, and you might not even be able to, take care of certain things for yourself, let alone pierce the veil of silence that you feel is very heavy upon you, regarded stigma in your life. So peer-to-peer proactive prevention is based on the idea that we know our friends and our families and our coworkers, the people in our spheres of influence, pretty well, where we have come accustomed to a typical behavior, what clinicians would call baseline behavior. And that's like kind of what you'd expect out of me on a given day. And if I'm someone you live with, or if I'm somebody that you talk with every day, be it through work or your familial connection, and you're gonna notice if I'm not myself, right? And being able to disrupt escalation to further impact and potentially arriving at a crisis stage, we want to, through our education, help equip people to start that conversation, to notice that somebody that they care about is not themselves, and then to start the conversation in a very simple way. Hey, are you okay? I've noticed that you're not yourself. I'm worried. And then reminding them it's okay not to be okay can be like a subtle cue that, hey, I know what stigma does. I know how it makes it hard to talk about it, but I'm going to try not to do that to you right now, right here. I'm just going to validate you. I'm going to try and respect your dignity, because you're a human being.
Mhm.
um, Being able to start that conversation in a simple way with somebody that you care about, um, that could get the conversation started. And as you talk, you're able to really release a lot of the pressure building in society. Um, Sometimes it can also help illuminate what problems have solutions, and what problems are more things that you have to reframe, or kind of just let be, because there are things outside of our control in life. That's just a reality. And
Mhm.
being able to talk to young people in those manners can be really challenging. So we use the soda bottle analogy to start that conversation with littles and bigs. This idea that mental health impacts us all, that we all have a brain, and if we imagine that that really powerful boss organ that controls everything else is a soda bottle, and that everything in our life can shake that bottle and build pressure, and the things that we do to feel joy, or hobbies, or self-expression, that lets out little bits of that pressure so we don't get to that exploding point. That can really make it easier to normalize the conversation with your littles, your bigs, any of the people you care about in your life, to be able to have that daily check-in. If you've normalized the conversation about mental health, you've made it okay to talk about mental health, chances are people won't conceal the impacts it's having when they're starting to feel not okay, and they'll talk to you about it because you've created that environment around yourself. um,
Mhm.
that's the best thing we can do as community members. You don't have to be a doctor or a mental health professional to start the conversation. You can use the soda bottle analogy to make it free of vernacular, free of labels or diagnoses, and really just a level playing field. Like, yeah, my bottle's shaking up right now from this quarantine, and some days I got to do a lot more to let that pressure out, and some days, no matter what I do, I still feel like I'm going to explode, because it's a collective trauma we're experiencing. So having that chiller language that's more conversational and approachable, can really help to make it more of a normal conversation to have, so that people can be proactive in the same ways. Like, we go to the dentist to keep our teeth nice and healthy. We want to be able to make it nice and accessible. If you want to use a professional level of care for your mental health, Well, that's okay. You can use that to stay well as well. You don't have to wait until things are really, really hard to take care of your mind that way.
Yeah, and you bring up a good point. Most of our volunteers are not clinicians. They're not clinical. They
Right.
don't do professional mental health programming. But I think it's important to kind of reiterate that having a check-in on a regular basis is super important, which is why we're continuing to try and do virtual mentoring.
I love it. I think it's so cool.
I think so too. I mean, we've had some really unique ideas on how to navigate. So we've had like crafting bags sent to a house, or they've played Guess Who over the internet, or just check in. Call once
Crafting
in a while.
bag sent to the house. Did I hear you correctly?
I
That's
did, yeah.
awesome. That's awesome.
It
So they
was a
get the
gift bag.
crafting bag, and then it's like the virtual space becomes not quite as virtual.
Yeah, we had a really amazing volunteer that set that up for her little, because she knew it was going to be difficult for her. And I just want to point out one thing is when I talk to a lot of kids and when I talk to a lot of parents, I always think, some of these kids don't even have someone to come home to and ask how their day is. That's not everybody. We have some
Truth.
amazing parents. We have an
Right.
awesome group of parents, but there are a lot of kids who come home and don't have someone to ask them how their day was. So I think that's a really great way to keep connected. Do you have any other ideas on how staying connected with other people?
Yeah, I mean, I know that social media has been demonized in the past, but I think how it intersects with mental health is a two-way street. You can use social media to go numb or to constantly compare yourself and just scroll, and that can be really unhealthy for you.
Mhm.
It doesn't matter your age. Adults do it, kids do it. Sometimes adults have just more resiliency built up over the course of their life, so it doesn't hurt them as much if somebody's being, kind of nasty. So my point being is that you can flip that on its side and use social media and this technology, as we've seen in the last 8 weeks I've been in quarantine, um, real deliberately. If you have a deliberate purpose for your use and consumption of screen time and technology, it can support your mental health and your physical health. Just your emotional resolve will be better if you're more connected. So I can't encourage enough, even 5-minute check-ins with a friend, or a family member, or if you're a coworker. Um, these things can really make your day and the other person's day in a reciprocal kind of way. You could be calling somebody to check in, and you're hoping that it makes their day, but in the process, as you're giving that support, they're grateful, and then that gratitude just kind of creates this nice double effect where it made both of your days. So even if it's just a 5-10 minute phone check-in, FaceTime, Zoom, Marco Polo app, TikTok, whatever, if you're sending a funny TikTok or a funny Facebook message to a friend, these little wins matter. And being able to grab onto these little strands of hope and joy from whatever the world seemed like before the pandemic for you, um, those little random acts of kindness, they are absolutely, they add up to something very, very important and very tangible for our communities. So if you're a little, you're a big, you're all able to do that with your social media if you do it more deliberately. There's Facebook groups that can bring people together of different interests and stuff too, like whole live stream concert Facebook groups. If you're into music, you can just kind of go down that rabbit hole in a good way, where you're like, oh wow, this is cool music, I found a new band that I like, or
Mhm.
things like that can be absolutely important to keep your mind off the negative stuff that can come at you from all angles these days. So
Mhm.
do what you can to put in some good as well. Spend some time with your friends online, and I know that social distance hangouts have started to become a thing, but I'm just kind of waiting until I hear from some of those doctors and pros and stuff to see when seems like the right time for me, and that's okay for each of the individuals out there taking this in today too. Do what
And
makes you
that's
feel
going to
good.
be, it's going to be a little difficult with Mother's Day coming up too. I know a lot of people miss their families,
Oh yeah.
myself included.
My mom calls
Um,
me all the time, like, I miss you. You want to come socially distance hang out? We'll wear masks. We'll do
yeah.
the whole thing. And I'm like, I don't know yet. I don't know, Mom. I love you. I'm sorry.
Yeah. I do have one person who told me that she brought her, like a mom brought her dog with her to see her son in the park, and then they gave the dog hugs instead of giving each other hugs.
That's kind of
So that
cute.
was nice. I want to touch back about social media. And yes, it's been demonized a lot, and used properly, it can be a really great tool. Something I think is really cool is you guys had a awesome panel discussion at your last conference called Boys Don't Cry, where our CEO, Jeremy Foster, sat on the panel and talked about, mental health stigmas in boys. And there
That
was
was the
another
coolest.
man, it was great. Yeah. And then there was another man on the panel, Davey, who actually was a little brother. And I know that since then he's connected with his big brother over social media.
That's so
Um,
cool.
I met someone at the Conversations Cafe who showed me on social media all of the things his little brother has been doing over the past 20 years because they've been matched for that long. Um, so yeah, social media can be used for positive.
Yeah, for sure.
Um, and I know that you're a musician. How have you been coping? What are some things that you've done other than, keeping your physical health in check? What
Mhm.
are some things that you've done?
Well, so as a musician that's not able to go do what I normally do, which is a really big part of my mental health management, music's been super healing for me over the years to work through the things that I've needed to work through from my own experiences, and to express myself, express the things that are maybe hard to articulate with words. So I have instruments all over the house. I got guitars and ukuleles and uh, really you name it. I even have like a little mini accordion that's super old and sounds really funny. You don't want to hear it, but sometimes I'll mess around with it to try and just get inspired to either write a song or just to kind of go to like a more centered place. If I'm feeling a little out of control, I can pick up a guitar and feel the strings and focus on my senses. That's often a tip that clinicians will give people that are experiencing post-traumatic stress disorder. If they start to feel like that anxiety or a trigger that's sending them back into whatever trauma they had experienced, just using your senses. There's a 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 technique where you pick 5 things you can actually see and focus on, like 5 items in your room or whatever. 4 things you can smell, 3 things that you can touch, and so on. With your senses. But for me, I just grab a guitar and I'll just pick and kind of be able to find a little more calm if I'm starting to kind of gain a little more momentum with my anxiety or whatever negative thought train I have started myself on. So it helps me knock it off. It's course. It helps me to diminish that momentum it may have started and prevents me from going down a spiral. But it doesn't work every time, and I'll have to get creative. I've been doing a lot of collage. I have tons of craft materials, so that's why I freaked out when you said the delivered craft kit. That made me so happy because I have I was an elementary school special ed teacher prior to working for Hope for the Day in Chicago Public Schools, and a big part of teaching social emotional literacy for me was giving all my students, no matter their ability level, an opportunity to express themselves. And collage is so fun for a lot of reasons, but using scissors, as simple as it might seem to an adult or even an older kid, that stuff is some of the hardest things to pick up when you're young and you're developing. Cutting scissors can be a very much an occupational therapist's go-to when developing fine motor skills and stuff like that. And how it relates to your brain is that, like, when I'm trying to chill out, cutting something out of a magazine and trying to cut the shape of it really focuses me. It feels kind of good. And then I take these pieces and I make these really bizarre, weird little postcards that I send to my friends, like little pieces of art, write a message on the back, and I mail it off because that feels like at least I'm in control of making a person that I care about smile, and I also got to be proud of something I made. Um,
Yeah.
so creativity can come in a lot of different ways. If you're not a guitar player, a singer, or something like that, you can have some dance parties at home. That's great exercise. It releases lots of endorphins. And understanding the science behind your mental health for the littles in particular, but it's also super helpful for me as an adult. That when I'm having a hard day, to remind myself the brain's producing a lot of chemicals, and mental health isn't just sadness; it's also my joy. Like when I snuggle my puppy and I feel all that anxiety melt away, so that I can think of it in a biological way and take some steps and be conscious of the fact that, hey, I'm trying to exert whatever control I can, and if it's not cutting it right now, that's okay. I can go chill on the couch and just rest. Um,
Yeah.
so
I love that you send your friends your collages. I know it's antiquated at this point, but
yeah, snail mail. I can show you
kidding,
one.
yeah. Yeah, I got a piece of mail the other day and it really made a huge difference in my day. I was so excited to get it. My friend wrote me a playlist too. Oh, that's really cute.
So I made like a little bunny with binoculars. He's looking at the city of Chicago, and he's like, "Wow, that's beautiful." He's got exclamation marks all around him. So this
That's
is just some
great.
cardboard that I cut up into a postcard size and
Yeah.
old magazines. You can do
Yeah.
it at home too, kids.
Yeah, you're getting something really tangible in your hands and also supporting the post office. So,
Yeah,
uh, two good things, three good things.
for sure.
Um, and so finally, I've taken a lot of your time, but how can someone find free or low cost professional support during this time? I know there's a lot of teletherapy going on, but
It's pretty cool that many providers have made that adjustment in such a such a quick way, because I know that for some people that might open the door to try out speaking to a counselor or a therapist for the first time in their life as a way to manage all of the feelings that are likely happening right now, and because that will help normalize mental health as a medical you know norm too for individuals to stay well. I would go to the Hope for the Day website, hftd.org, and I would utilize the Hope for the Day resource compass to search for resources wherever you happen to be. There's a bunch of really cool filters too. So as you punch in your zip code, it goes to another screen with all of the social services in that zip code. And you can kind of narrow it down based on free, sliding scale, online, different things like that. Even specifically to maybe if you have a diagnosis that you're trying to receive support with. There's also a ton of online support groups. If you are somebody that just maybe feels like that's not your thing, though, in a group session, one-on-one therapy can be accessed through a lot of different teletherapy platforms. There's things like Talkspace. There's things like Headspace if you're more just trying to do it on your own and get into some mindfulness and some meditation and utilize some app-based anxiety reduction. But the Chicago Department of Public Health also has a phone number. If you go to the website, and they have a really nice uh, curated website of resources based on categories. Click on the mental health one, it brings you to a place where there's a phone number you can call to set up teletherapy through the public health department, which is pretty cool. I can't even believe that Illinois has uh, done the emotional support text line as well.
mm,
I'm not sure if you're aware of that, but I've been really blown away by JB and Lori's kind of focus in keeping people safe and healthy, and putting out a text line like that for emotional support related to COVID. Anybody can text that line as well. Wish I had it handy, but I think it's 520 or 520 but I would encourage everybody to look that up and check it
mhm.
out.
We'll
There's a
include
crisis,
that in our
yeah.
description of this thing. So,
There's a crisis text line also. If you were really just struggling and you needed someone to talk to, or you are concerned about a friend and want some advice from a crisis intervention specialist, that's 741-741. You can text that crisis text line and really receive some excellent quick support in that manner. Ultimately, there's community health centers too, community wellness centers. You can look up, you can get on your Google, and group therapy can often be more cost effective than individual therapy for some providers. There's a whole lot of ways to navigate the access to this type of care. And if you're in a unique situation and you'd like further support in navigating that type of resource, you can reach out at Hope for the Day. I'm Mike at hftd.org if anybody would like to drop me a line, in the future.
Okay, can you tell me what's on the horizon for HFTD? Or yeah,
Yes.
HFTD. I know
Nailed it. You nailed that acronym.
Mental Health Awareness Month. So yeah.
So welcome to May. Welcome to Mental Health Month. We've got a lot of cool stuff happening every week. We've been doing virtual education, our Things We Don't Say 1-hour workshop that's very conversational and approachable. It's a great starting point for anybody that wants to try to reorient their mind to a proactive mindset when it comes to supporting their own mental health and that of the people they care about. It's called Things We Don't Say, and it's offered twice a week, Tuesdays at 2:30 and Tuesdays at 11 a.m., Saturdays at 2:30 p.m., both Central Standard Time via Zoom webinar. And you can register at peervention.org. Peervention.org, it's like P-E-E-R, peervention.org is where you can find all the listings of education offerings that we would have typically been doing across the street at the library from Sip of Hope, but have gone digital. Thursdays at 6 p.m. are Conversations Cafe, the other bit of education programming that was, a centerpiece, a cornerstone of Hope for the Day and Sip of Hope programming. We used to do it monthly at the shop, and now we do it weekly online. So this week's episode, this Thursday, May 7th at 6 p.m. Central Standard Time, is called Welcome to Mental Health Month. And we'll really be digging into starting that conversation and giving people practical skills for being proactive in their sphere of influence, hosted by Carl Evans, Hope for the Day's Senior Director of Operations. So that's really great. And then there's a bunch of different stuff that we do on Instagram Live and stuff. But I could talk for hours about the things we're doing this month. We're going to take over Hope Foods social media at some point. They're a partner of ours in Colorado that has put resources on tubs of hummus. Hope Foods can be bought at all sorts of different grocery stores. And they just kind of took a little page from the old Dark Matter coffee book by putting resources on a product and meeting people where they're at with text, reminding them it's okay not to be okay, and then there's resources out there. So
internet is a power tool right now.
Yeah, we're gonna keep going. We're in this together, and we're out here just trying to shine the light. So if anybody has ideas, we're always down to collaborate with our agents of impact and our partners of prevention. So really glad to be here. Thanks for making some time.
Yeah. So we have hftd.org for mental health resources. We have peervention.org to learn more about your education program, and savesip.org to help support Sip of Hope. So a few different resources. We'll put in our comments what those numbers were that you were talking about so that people can text and feel a little more connected. But really appreciate everything you've done. Appreciate your support for virtual mentoring. Anyone that wants to become a big out there, whether it's through HFTD or through Big Brothers Big Sisters, please let us know, and you can help keep kids connected. So again, thanks so much, Mike, and I hope to see you in real life soon.
Sounds good. Have a great day. All right.
You too.